we already entered into Portugal a little bit. So specifically about Porto, of course. The first one that I have, it's a cultural adjustment. A thing that took you a while to adapt in Portugal after so many years living abroad.
Right. I get asked this a lot, and it's kind of funny because since we've been to, places like Korea and Saudi Arabia, Portugal's easy because at least it's part of Europe. But there are obviously different cultural things to adapt to. One of the biggest things I think for me were the grocery stores and just the overall shopping experience. And I think it's like this when you move to a lot of places. You have to figure out how the grocery stores are laid out. They're laid out differently. Where is something I even still like at stores that I shop, I always think, oh, where is that jar of jelly? I can't remember where they put it. And it always seems to be in the weirdest spot. And you're like, oh, okay, that's where it is. So I think, it's kind of a silly one, but sometimes when you first move to a place, it could be stressful and overwhelm you when you just go into the grocery store and you're like, I can't find anything that I know I should be able to find. So culturally, just the grocery stores here in Portugal sometimes take a little bit of time to figure out where things are because it might not make sense as to why they're there, but for some reason it makes sense to them.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, here in the north of Italy, it's very difficult to find coriander. I don't get it, but like everywhere in the world, it's, but yeah, whatever.
Mhm.
Second one that I have, it's social life. How do you usually meet new friends while you are?
We have met new friends through soccer just because, again, I used to play, my husband used to play, and we love to watch. So it's something that we share a passion for. So this is where we've actually met a lot of our local Portuguese friends. We support a team that's based out of London called Arsenal, but we're part of the Arsenal Portugal supporters group. They are the official supporters group for Portugal for the team of Arsenal, and most in there are Portuguese. There are a few other expats in there, but we do meetups. We watch the games together, like watch parties. We grab meals together. So that's been a great way for us to meet people. And we go to FC Porto games as well. We have season tickets and we have friends that we sit with it's a mix of Portuguese and expats. So for us, sports has been a really big way to meet people just by going and watching live sports or going and watching on TV. But I think that the best way to meet people is through some shared hobby because then it's a great way to meet locals and expats, but you already have something in common that you're going to enjoy rather than trying to force it. So, meeting someone, like if you like hiking or surfing or whatever that looks like, I think that's a really great way to meet people is through a hobby.
Absolutely agree. It's the way that I always meet people.
Mhm.
Funny enough to why are you Gunners? Like, how did you become fans of Arsenal coming from?
I know. It seems a little weird, but so my husband was first, and a long time ago, at that time in the US, they were only showing a few teams on TV, and Arsenal was one of them. He played defense. It was 1-0 to the Arsenal. They had a really strong defense. He really liked the way that they played. So he started off liking Arsenal. And then like I said, I played, but I didn't watch as much. But when he and I started dating, we started watching together. And of course, he liked Arsenal. So I was watching Arsenal, but he really got me into it because I'm very competitive and he's like, "You should create a fantasy football team." And so that's how I started like learning about the different players and the teams because I wanted to win. He had me join a group with his friends, so I was like, "I'm going to win this group." And so that's how I started also getting to know the teams a little better and then just liking Arsenal as well because of the players. Yeah.
Okay, going back to the questions, like the third one that I have, it's language. Live in Portugal. Do you need to speak Portuguese? Yes or yes? How are you doing with learning Portuguese also?
The good thing is that the Portuguese have a really high English language proficiency. They learn in school. A while ago, it used to be French. So the older population, generally, if they speak a second language, it's probably French and maybe a little bit of English just because of their exposure through TV and movies and media. But the younger population generations, actually speak really good English. So that's really helpful. And generally, anyone in the service industry has some sort of level of English. So in the big cities, Lisbon, Porto, Braga, it's pretty easy to get by with not knowing any Portuguese. That being said, they do always appreciate if you're trying. So learning at least a little bit before you come is good. And then while you're here, starting to take lessons. And there's all different types of lessons and platforms that you could take that work for your lifestyle, your learning style, whether you want it to be conversational or written, reading, whatever that might be. So the good thing is you can definitely get by, especially in the bigger cities. If you go to a smaller, more remote place, it might be a little harder, but generally the Portuguese are very kind. So they'll work with you if you don't speak Portuguese and they don't speak English. But then also for us, We have along the way, since we've been here for over 5 years now, we've taken different classes, we've done different online platforms, conversational. And then since we could apply for our citizenship in the fall of last year, we had to have an A1, A2 certificate, language certificate to apply. So we took a course that allowed us to get that certificate. We're still learning. What I think is really great is my daughter's teacher does not speak English. She's younger, but she actually is half French, so she speaks French and Portuguese. I mean, she obviously has a little bit of base for English, but it's a great place for me to comfortably practice because I know she doesn't
Mm,
look at me like I'm an idiot. So it's like a safe space to practice my Portuguese. But overall, that's the other thing too is getting out since people speak English, like, and they see that you aren't a native Portuguese speaker, they automatically will switch over to English just to be more, like make it more comfortable for you. So you have to say, no, I live here. I would like to practice and speak Portuguese. And in the north in Porto, they're very kind in doing that. And they'll switch over and they'll take their time with you, which is good. So you just have to be intentional about wanting to practice. That's the big thing because you can get by without it.
cool. Next one, it's cost of living on average and in general.
Yes. So it depends obviously on where you live. Lisbon and Porto being the bigger cities will have a higher cost of living for most things. Housing is a really big one right now. That's a bit of the X factor just because housing, there's a bit of a supply demand issue that's going on. So it's been driving prices up in the housing industry. So depending on what you're looking for housing will, depend on your overall monthly budget. But for a family of three, we comfortably live on 3,500, and that is including school fees because our daughter goes to a private Portuguese school, which is super affordable, but just an added cost, since we have a daughter. And then, three mouths to feed, her extracurriculars, and so on. And then lifestyle as well depends on how often you're getting your hair cut, if you get your nails done, massages, all of those things are very, very affordable. And I like to do those things, but they do add up. So that's the other thing. You might say, oh, it's cheap or it's affordable. Like, keeping in mind, like if you're doing those things on a regular basis, then they do add up. So for a family of three, 3,500, maybe to 4,000, obviously because of travel. But if you're a couple or a single, you could definitely do it lower. It will just depend on what your housing is and what that is. And then going from there, how often you're eating out and stuff. Again, very affordable, but going to be more expensive than if you're getting groceries more regularly.
Makes sense. You touch upon the next one, but finding an apartment, a home, like how do you find apartments right now? I know that in Portugal it's getting difficult, but what's the process? What's the normal process to try to find a home?
It is really difficult. There are a couple online platforms like Idealista and Casa Sapo are some of the big ones, but those they won't have everything for sure, and they tend to be higher prices. Portugal still does a lot of word of mouth, so knowing people. So there's a lot of properties that aren't even listed on there because you have to know a
Right.
realtor or you just have to know. The Portuguese have a lot of real estate actually. The way that it works is it's passed down from generation to generation. So there's a lot in stock, depending on how old it is and how renovated it is, that varies. But there is the stock there, but they don't put it out on platforms. So knowing people is really important. Having either like a renter's or a buyer's agent, different realtor. So that's always really tricky because, and I'm sure we'll talk about this at some point, but a couple of the main visas, you have to have accommodation as part of the visa process. So it's like, I get asked this a lot. How do I get that and make sure that I'm getting what I actually think I'm getting without being scammed or having issues or having mold on the walls or something like that if I'm not actually there, but I have to have it before I apply. So knowing people that are actually in Portugal is really helpful. Word of mouth, whether that's friends or connections, resources, like trustworthy resources. Because if you go on Facebook, there's loads of realtors. Oh, I'll
Mm,
help you. But you just have to be careful there because you don't want it to be a scam. So trustworthy people that have been vetted is very important. But once you have those resources, it's really great. It's a lot easier to find and to be able to negotiate price and terms and everything.
nice. The next one that I have, it's living like a local. I know it's a term that it's a little bit difficult, but what do you do to blend in Portugal?
I think one of the funniest things, which people probably don't think about, is a lot of Portuguese wear pants all the time. The females in the summer sometimes, will be in shorts or maybe skirts, but a lot of the guys actually wear pants. So it's really funny, like walking around, especially if it's at all like cool weather. if you see someone in shorts, you're like, oh, that must be a British person, or they're definitely not Portuguese because the Portuguese, even in the north, like it will be like warm outside or maybe a little cool, and they're in these big like puffy jackets, and you're just like, whoa, like you can never look outside and try to figure out what the weather's like because the Portuguese are always bundled up, pants and jackets and everything. So if you want to stick in, then you're probably wearing pants, more of a jacket. You're not wearing like a baseball hat. That's a lot more like, looks like a tourist or someone who's not Portuguese. And then also, I think especially in Porto, down by the river, if you're eating at one of those like locations down by the river, the Portuguese don't do that because generally the food is more expensive and it's not as good. It caters more for the view and the tourism. So in those locations, you won't find so much that the Portuguese are eating there. They're more trying to sell things or something like that. So you find more of like the local mom and pop places that still exist that are smaller, that don't take reservations. You just walk in, but you have to be there right when they open or else they're full. So that's kind of how to blend in and live like a local, not doing much by the river, I would say, in Porto.
Avoid the river. I
Yeah,
like it.
yeah. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And when people come visit, we go down there to show them, but like we don't just go out for a meal down there.
The next one, it's a little bit tricky because I mean, you have your own business and you work online, but work life, maybe from people that you know, how is the working situation in Porto or in Portugal right now?
So the work situation, a lot of people actually do have online businesses or work remote. A lot of the expats, at least locals, is in the normal, 9 to 5. They take a little bit of break. It's not like the Spanish where they have this long siesta in the middle of the day. I get asked that a lot as well, but they'll have a little bit of a break. They like their coffee breaks and their smoke breaks and everything. But overall, it depends on what industry you're in. There's a lot more workspaces that are becoming available for those who are working online just because the world we live in now, it's a little more available to do that. But I would say overall they do have a very good work life balance, which I like. They work hard, they're hard workers, but they also know when it's time to like close the computer and be done and have a good time, go to a festival, go out to dinner. So I do appreciate their work life balance. It's not like a rat race. Like where it just seems like you're working, working, working. So that is really good here. The unfortunate thing is the minimum wage and the overall salaries are quite low. So
Mhm.
that is a bit of a bummer if if you're working here on one of those wages, like you don't have much spending power. So while it is affordable here to live, it's a little harder if you wanted to move somewhere else. And actually that happens a lot. A lot of the Portuguese, especially the young Portuguese, they leave and they go to other places in Europe because you can make more money.
Sounds familiar. The next one I have, it's getting around. How does the public transport work? Do you need a car to live in Portugal?
Mhm. Yeah, it really depends on where you live, if you need a car or not. In Lisbon or Porto, you definitely don't. They have public transportation, they have metros and buses, and then a lot of the other cities have buses as well, but it's just the 2 right now in Lisbon and Porto. If you wanna have a little bit of land, a little bit of space, then yeah, you'll definitely need a car. But if you live in Lisbon or Porto, you can definitely live without a car. Even if you're living a little further out, as long as you're kinda closer to a metro station or a bus stop, then it's fine. We do have friends who came here thinking, "Oh, I don't want a car," but then they didn't like having to be on someone else's timetable. They wanted to have the flexibility to go out to one of the national parks whenever they wanted, so they ended up getting a car. But we have a lot of friends who don't have cars. We don't have a car. We don't want a car. I would not want to drive around Porto with all the one-way streets and the traffic and the tourists and the e-scooters now and the Portuguese are a little bit of crazy drivers as well. I will say that. So I when we want to go somewhere that's a little harder to get to by like we can't go by bus or train or obviously flying, then we just rent a car. And so that's very easy to just rent a car for the weekend or for a week or whatever that might look like. But you could definitely do without a car. It just kind of depends on if you want to or not. But yeah, I would say the other thing too is a lot of Americans will come here and be like, I'm tired of the car. I don't want the car culture. And so a lot of Americans don't have cars, but a lot of Portuguese do. Practically, I think like every Portuguese person I know has a car. So it is actually a car culture. Portuguese do have cars. So they do find it weird when Americans move here and they're like, I don't want a car. But I think we just kind of want to break from it. And we're like, we don't have as many opportunities outside of like the really big cities in the US to not have a car. Like you have to have a car. So when you move here and you think, I don't have to have a car, I can have a break from that. I don't have to worry about maintenance or gas or insurance or the stress. Like you're just like, oh, that's so much easier. I'd rather take public transportation. But the Portuguese, all the Portuguese have cars.
Makes a lot of sense. Next one, hopefully you didn't touch it much, but healthcare. How is the system working? Is it easy to access? It's good quality?
Yes, the healthcare here is actually really good quality. They have a mix of public and private, and I've used both, and I actually recommend that people use both. The thing with the public is it's tax funded, so that's great as far as like financially, like how much you're paying and everything. But because everyone uses it and has access to it, it's just really overworked. So sometimes if you have a non-emergency situation and you need to have like maybe a scheduled surgery or something, or just to get in to see that surgeon can take months and months and months just because it's not an emergency and there's just no time in the public sector. So this is where a lot of people top up, they get private insurance, or you don't even need private insurance to go to the private clinics and hospitals. You would just pay out of pocket, and out of pocket isn't even that bad. But a lot of people will use both. So if you have something that's a non-emergency situation, then it is nice to have a GP or a specialist in the private sector. But as far as the quality of care, both are very, very good.
Cool. You touched it a little bit, and this is always the question that I'm afraid of asking, but bureaucracy, how is paperwork, visas, permits? How does the system work?
Oh, it's a nightmare right now. So yeah, the paperwork, yeah, it is tricky. There are issues right now with people trying to get visas, with visa renewal. It's just again overwork. There's been such high demand for the past couple of years that there's this massive backlog, and they just need more workers. And they keep saying we're hiring more people and we're trying to get through the backlog, which they are. I have seen different areas that have been implemented that have actually been working. One of them, for example, is an online portal for those who need to renew their temporary residency cards. And that's actually working. So we're seeing glimmers of hope, but it is still sometimes you think it feels a little antiquated with how you have to do the paperwork, how they don't have online ways that you could submit things. So there is some of that are issues. That being said, once you're a citizen, they have so many more apps and online platforms that streamline things that you have access to. But you have to be a citizen because you have to have a special citizenship number to access those. So even us with a temporary residency or permanent residency, we have a different number, and those numbers cannot access those platforms for some reason. And I think this is where they really need to improve that because once they, yeah, it's kind of weird, right?
It's
Once,
weird,
because
no?
you're a
Yeah.
resident here, so you should be able to access those things. So I think they will move towards that in the future. They just don't have the manpower to actually implement and get it going. They're so behind in other things that they're working on those types of backlogs. So once they can implement, if you're a citizen and a resident, that you can use some of these more automated services that are online, it'll be really, really good. But they're not there yet. So for citizens, it's great. For those of us who are just residents or trying to apply for the initial visa, oy, it is hard. It is hard to get the initial appointment that you might need, like for the D7 or D8, and then just getting the secondary one that you need once you're in the country and your biometrics, and then will your card arrive? I mean, there's the bureaucracy here can be rough. But there are services, and again, this is one of the reasons that I started Slate and Key, and I can talk about that later, is to assist with this because since I've been here and I know how it works, I have a good team around me that knows how to do stuff. Then it's easier and a little more stress free because you have someone mainly doing it for you or telling you go do this, get this done, and then I'll take it and then I'll go do what needs to be done. Because when you're not here and you're applying from abroad, or even if you are here and you don't know how it works, or you don't know the language, sometimes you hit this wall or you hit this loop, like this closed circle where it's
Hmm.
like they need this number, but you don't have that number, but you can't get that number until you can't access the platform without that number. So I mean there's some crazy things going on, but I'm seeing it getting a little better.
Yeah. But let's slowly, let's say like this. That's
Slowly.
South European style of doing things.
Yes. Yes.
I have two more. The first one, it's the best and the worst. Like the best thing of living in Portugal, the worst thing about living in.
The best thing for me, I would say, is the cafe culture. I really like that you just sit outside, you have a coffee or a wine, you chat with friends, you watch people. Just people are so friendly. The older people love to chat as well. If you have a dog, they're going to talk to you. If you have a child, they're going to talk to you, or you just see them communicating with each other. So I do really like that you have that cafe culture where you can just relax and hang out with friends, and then watching people going into the different places that you still have the butcher and the fruit shop and the bottle shop. And so while they do have big grocery stores that have everything, you still have those specific shops as well. So just watching people going in and out of those and exploring that yourself as well is really nice. So I think my favorite thing is the cafe culture and just kind of that balance that I talked about before with the work life balance. I think the worst thing right now really is just the bureaucracy and the paperwork. Like, if it works for you, it's okay. But if you get stuck where you like hit a wall or someone in like with paperwork has to think outside the box for the situation, it can be really, really hard. And it could take a lot of time to either unravel whatever problem that was caused or just try to get past it. If you get stuck in that, that is stressful.
Makes sense. Last one, the top tip that you would give someone who is planning. I know you have a lot of them probably, but what is the one line advice?
Yes, the biggest tip I give people is come to Portugal with no expectations. Because if you think it's going to be a certain way, you romanticize it in your head and it's not that way, then it's going to upset you. And that's going to change how you feel about the whole move, about how you feel with the country, the people, everything. So if you come in knowing it's going to be different than your home country, and you just come in with zero expectations, you go with the flow, you take things as they come, then you'll be much happier and things will not stress you out as much because it's going to be different here.
Makes a lot of sense. Like lower a bit like the expectations to then surprise the nice parts.